Now we'll cover page layout and design. Basically, we're going to be working with tables. These tools will give you the flexibility to easily do almost anything you want with your page layout. By default, any new page created looks like this. Here we have a simple layout table with 2 cells. Now we can go down here and just start typing more content. Or we can add a new table so we separate it into sections. So we see that we only have one table on the page. And if we want to add a new one, we go up here to the Tables dropdown and we click Insert New Layout Table. And it adds a new table below the one we are currently in. Now we want to fill it in with some content. So let's just go ahead and copy and paste this paragraph for now. Now you're probably wondering, why would I need a separate table? Well, let's just assume that this paragraph covers a different topic than the one above, and we want to visually separate the two. So let's go ahead and click on this table down here, and we're going to edit table properties. Here we have quite a few options, so let's go over them. The first is alignment. You can ignore this for now because our table is a layout table, which is an outer table, meaning that it's not inside of another table. We'll get to that shortly. The next 2 items are for border. Now you would never add a border to an outer table, and I personally don't like borders anyways because they just add too much busyness to the page. But if you wanted to, you can click to activate the color picker and choose a color, and you can even change the border thickness. And if you want to remove the border, you just click the X. You can also change the background color. Now on this color picker, we have a color palette. The first 4 colors are the preset ones from our template designer. The next 2 are preset opaque black and white. And the other 6 are your palette history. And the palette history for your tables is different than the palette history for your font colors. And we'll just click this one. The CSS ID is for setting custom CSS styles for advanced users that know CSS coding, or for setting them as anchors, but we'll cover that in a different video. You can also select a background image, but we'll come back to that. And you can set a radius to round the corners, but again, you don't want to do that on an outer table. Cell padding and cell spacing. I'm going to change this to 10. That way I can show you what this is on the page. And since this is an outer table, the width is set to 100% because we want the table to always fill the entire width of the browser. And height we can leave blank because it will automatically resize based on content. And down here it shows any settings that have been applied. This is more for people that understand coding. So let's go ahead and click Update. Let's turn off the editor. And as we look at the page, the different sections are separated by background color, which helps to break up all that text. Now let's put the page back in edit mode. Okay, cell spacing is the distance between cells and the outer edge of the table. So we have 50 pixels all around this cell. Now cell padding is the distance between the border of the cell and its content. Remember we set this one to 10 pixels? Meanwhile, the one above is at the default setting of 0. So why would you need cell padding? Well, let's say you wanted to change the background of just the table cell rather than the whole table. Let's try it. We'll click inside this table cell. And now we're going to go up to Edit Cell Properties. And here we have some of the same settings, but we also have vertical align. By default, it's set to top, and I'll show you what that means shortly. You also have a padding setting. This is the same as cell padding, except this only applies to this cell, whereas the cell padding settings for the table applies to all cells in the table. So let's go ahead and set the background color. We'll also give it a border radius and give it a padding of 30 pixels. And down here we can decide if we want all these settings applied to just this cell or all the cells in the table. For now, we'll just do the current cell. We click Update, and now you see the difference between styling an entire table or just the cell. And notice that this cell up here doesn't have any padding. That's because we only set the padding for this cell. And when you set the padding in cell properties, it always overrides the padding setting in the table properties. With table properties and cell properties, we can really make our site look nice and professional and break up the text so it's not so boring. Okay, let's cover a few more options. We'll click inside this table cell. Let's go ahead and insert a column after. And as you see, it added another row of cells after the cell where my caret is. We can also do insert column before. Now let's put some text in these cells. We'll just start typing randomly. If you notice, the cells act like a grid. If one cell has a lot of content, it stretches the height of all the cells right along with it. Now remember how we had vertical align set to top? That means that if the cell is taller than the content will align to the top of the cell. Let's go ahead and change that to see what it looks like. We'll click in here, edit cell properties. We'll set this one to middle. Update, and now it's in the middle. This one, we'll go ahead, edit cell properties, and we'll put it to bottom. Update, and we see that one's aligned to the bottom. Pretty self-explanatory. Now I also want you to notice that as I type, it expands the width of the table cells. And it does this automatically to try to balance the width of the cells based on content. If you want the cells to have set widths, you can do that. Since we have 3 cells, let's go ahead and make them all equal. We'll go ahead and do edit cell properties. Let's go ahead and set it to 33% since we have 3. This will make them all even. And we'll leave the vertical line set to top, and we're going to apply this to all the cells in the table. Update, and there you have it. They are all equal width. And I can go ahead and add a row before and add a row after. And here we have a new row up here and a new row down here. And of course we can type in these as well. Now here's a cool feature. I can click and drag across these 3 and I can merge table cells. And now they become one. And I can even go ahead and split them back up. So you can do a lot with tables. I can even go ahead and delete one of the columns. And now we're down to 2 columns. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of this one too. Now we're going to go ahead and add a background image to this table. We'll do edit table properties, select image, and since this is the only one we have right now, we'll select that one. And you see the file path to that image in this box. And this double arrow button will set the image to auto stretch and fill the table from side to side. So let's click that. And it turns purple to let you know that it's active. And let's remove the background color by clicking the X. Update. And now that image is the background for this table. But the text is now hard to see, so let's fix that. Let's click in here. Let's go to Edit Cell Properties and set the background color to an opaque white. Add some padding, maybe a border radius, and update. That looks a lot better. Let's get rid of these. Now this method of using a background image is simple, but it has some particulars. The table height will always auto-expand based on content, as it normally would. So if you don't have a lot of content, you only see a portion of the background image. And as you add content, you see more of it. And if you add too much content, the background image will repeat. Okay, let's do a few more things now. I'm just going to shorten these up a bit so it's easier to see. And this time I'm going to use the Insert New Inner Table button. This places an inner table inside the outer layout table so you can make charts, lists, have a bunch of pictures, whatever. And as you add content, it will auto-expand. And inner tables will always have a purple outline, while the outer layout tables will always be blue. Now with an inner table, you can set the alignment. So let's go ahead and we'll go to center. Update, and now it's in the middle. We can also go ahead and add a border to it. Let's edit the cell properties. Let's do a background color, add some padding. We're going to apply to all cells in table, update. Okay, now let's go ahead and delete this table. Go down here, delete table, and it's gone. I'm going to go ahead and click inside this table and add a new layout table. Now we're going to click in here again, and this time we're going to insert new image table. Okay, let me explain what this just did. It placed an outer layout table on the page that has no cell padding and no cell spacing, and it has an image added as content. Remember, table cells auto-expand according to content, so now this table is the height of the image because the image is placed in there as content and not as a background image. This way we always see the entire image without it being cut off, regardless of how much content is in there. It also added an inner table that's floating above the image. The reason this is possible is because the inner table has its position set to absolute, which allows it to ignore all other content, the image for example, and float wherever it's set to. And this floating inner table has the standard cell spacing of 50 pixels and a cell padding of 40 pixels. And it has an opaque white background. Now this is just a default and you can change it to whatever you want. And as we type, the table expands, but the outer table is unaffected. This is what you have by default in your header. Okay, one last thing. Let's say we have a bunch of tables on our page, and we decide we want to rearrange them. Let's go ahead and just add a few more. Now if I want to move this table, all I do is click inside of it, and I can move it up, so now it's up here, or I can move it down. Now it's all the way down here. And I can do this with any table. And it's that simple. So that's it for page layout and design. Now we really can't cover every possibility, so just play around with it and see what works best for you.